Mercedes will have a very difficult job to extract the best possible performance of a plagued W15 car, as the team will be going into the Japanese Grand Prix this week with a very low confidence, seeing as how much Ferrari and McLaren are improving with each coming race. Russell and Hamilton's job in Suzuka will be primarily to secure a top 10 finish and only then possibly fight for the podium, which already has 2 seats taken if we're counting that at least one Ferrari and one Red Bull driver will be on it. If we can call it that, there is promising news coming out of Brackley that the team have identified the problem and will now begin to work on it. The Silver Arrows have their work cut out for them in the upcoming period, especially in Japan, to try and at least have an average season going into 2025, when they will of course lose their best driver. In the first few races, the German team encountered significant issues concerning the narrow operational window of the car. Meanwhile, the handling of the W15 revealed a discrepancy between the balance simulated and the actual driver experience, and this comes from the car's unpredictability, making it difficult to develop software accurately mimicking the W15's behaviour. Another deficiency comes from the ineffective performance of the underbody, attributed to an inappropriate ride height, and in contrast to Jeddah, the Brackley team opted to trial a previously tested floor before not even using it in Bahrain. This was aimed at assessing the floor's actual functionality and regaining downforce to stabilise the rear axle. The change in specification also aimed to comprehend the fluid vane's flow in the most aerodynamically significant area of the car. Essentially, what happens is at high speeds, the underbody of the W15 experiences stalling, with the fluid vane unable to adhere to the aerodynamic surfaces due to its high energy, resulting in detachment from the walls. This aspect compromises the effectiveness of the diffuser, which is compelled to operate with turbulent flows, thereby restricting vertical thrust. Additionally, the team encountered bouncing issues on the Saudi Arabian track, attributed to a platform highly sensitive to vertical oscillations. Mercedes has yet to score higher than 5th, and after a double retirement in Australia, it's fallen 29 points behind 3rd placed McLaren. We are starting to see a pattern emerge that most weekends we have a period in the weekend where we are feeling confident about the car, but then in the paying sessions, in qualifying and the race, that slips through our fingers, Allison explained. If we were trying to draw that pattern together, then probably the strongest correlation that we can make at the moment is that our competitiveness drops when the track is warm, when the day is at its warmest, and therefore the tyre temperatures rise with those of the track. That gives us some clues about what we need to do as we move forward from here. From FP3 to qualifying in Melbourne, there was not a setup change. But why is Mercedes' power unit also unreliable, considering the fact that Hamilton had to retire in Australia? Let me remind you that it was only a few years ago when the Silver Arrow was the school book example of a reliable vehicle. Although the FIA granted adjustments to power units in 2023 for reliability reasons, Ferrari and Red Bull effectively capitalised on these modifications, enhancing stability and power in their engines. However, obtaining similar benefits from the current power unit seems that it's not going to happen for the Brackley side, and while they theoretically leveraged these adjustments, their efforts failed to yield advantages, particularly in terms of reliability. These issues also afflicted some customer teams. In Bahrain, during high temperatures, the W15 experienced power reduction during the race to prevent overheating of the engine and avoid exhausting the limited bonuses available for element replacements before incurring penalties. The challenges persisted in Australia, where Lewis Hamilton retired prematurely on lap 16, and this setback made an already challenging weekend even worse, as recent advancements in aeromechanical engineering from Brackley failed to deliver expected performance. A recent report highlighted Mercedes' plans to address these issues in the coming weeks to narrow the performance gap at the forefront of the competition. The fact is that Mercedes has a clear reliability problem linked to the power unit, and the team must be looking to improve this in Suzuka. A month ago, the team installed some internal components that were hidden under the bodywork, which, considering the new aerodynamic appearance, are unable to guarantee the necessary optimal temperature range, and these factors don't always allow the good qualities of the Mercedes engine to be fully exploited in the race, with drivers being forced to limit the engine performance of the Mercedes W15, as we already saw this season in Bahrain. Now, apparently the problem we've talked about can be solved, but in the short term. Difficulties which, once eliminated, bearing in mind the future package of updates, which should be presented during April, would allow the Silver Arrows to optimise performance and close much of the excessive gap from the top that was opened in the first 3 races of this championship. With expectations clearly reset after the disappointment of Melbourne, Allison admits that Mercedes will need to take a highly experimental approach to this weekend's Japanese Grand Prix, and there is concern that the Suzuka circuit's characteristics could prove particularly challenging for Mercedes, while Red Bull, Ferrari and McLaren all appear to be confident of maximising their packages. It is a track with plenty of fast corners and also some slowish hairpins, so a real test of the car, Allison said. Our job will be to make sure that we are attacking some of those things I discussed earlier, the tyre temperature issue, the high to low speed balance, and all the activities between now and then will be to try to work out in the simulator and see what we can do in simulation to influence those things. Then their focus will be on designing the program for Suzuka to ensure its efficient execution within the limited time frame available, and it will be imperative for Mercedes to allocate sufficient time for achieving stable temperatures in the tyres. The program should encompass evaluations not only for single lap performance but also for race mode conditions with stabilised temperatures, and Mercedes is also mindful that following Suzuka, the first sprint event awaits in the form of the Chinese Grand Prix. Teams will only have 1 practice session to configure their cars before the competitive proceedings start. Team principal Toto Wolff shared his concerns following the Australian Grand Prix, expressing disappointment with Mercedes' performance. He highlighted the stark contrast between their expectations and the reality of McLaren's substantial lead, which do show that Mercedes needs significant improvement. The dire situation in Mercedes was very neatly showcased when Wolff stated that he wants to punch himself on the nose after the Australian Grand Prix, and this really hit the nail on the head because things are simply not right yet at Mercedes, and there is clearly a difference between performance in simulations and actual speed on the track. While McLaren demonstrated a remarkable turnaround last year, Mercedes faces a less favourable outlook, and despite McLaren's early struggles predicted in 2023, Mercedes anticipated a stronger start in the current season. The situation is further worsened by how the team will deal with Lewis Hamilton this year, because their decision to exclude him from certain technical discussions starting from this summer, the burden of development falls primarily now on George Russell, and while Hamilton's commitment to maximising performance remains unwavering, with what is happening in Brackley at the moment, one could wonder about Hamilton's motivation, even considering that he has a front row seat in seeing the improvement of his next team, Ferrari. With 21 races remaining, it may be premature for Mercedes to anticipate a rocky season, but change must happen, and it must happen quickly. Hamilton's determination to push the limits of the car is evident, but to get even close to Ferrari and Red Bull is now an uphill battle, and will require Mercedes to improve this car 110%. While Red Bull and Ferrari smoothly progress through regular development programs, Mercedes has faced challenges over the past 2 years, and to return to consistent winning form before 2025, they must immediately address the current issues. However, recent history suggests that overcoming these obstacles may prove difficult with a short time frame. But let's see. as we've mentioned many times throughout our videos, 1 + 1 rarely equals 2 in the world of Formula 1. So do you think that Mercedes will bounce back in Japan? Or will this be another below average race for the Silver Arrows? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'll see you very soon in the next video.